Listen carefully. The notion that financial success depends on a mystical revelation or a stroke of luck is one of the biggest loads of nonsense circulating in popular culture. Warren and I haven't spent decades at the top of Berkshire Hathaway chasing miracles. We've achieved it through the systematic avoidance of foolishness. Most people are obsessed with the big move, that movie-worthy masterstroke that will supposedly rescue them from mediocrity in a single euphoric afternoon. They crave the Hollywood version, adrenaline, flashing screens, and secret plans. The reality, much to the profound disappointment of your ego, is that building solid wealth is an agonizingly tedious process. It's not about surviving major hurricanes, but about managing what I call termites. A financial disaster can bring down a structure in seconds, but it's the termites, those tiny, invisible, constant, and destructive habits that truly devour the foundations of your future while you're distracted, looking the other way. Failure is rarely a grand Greek tragedy, but rather the result of 1,000 small daily bites to your capital and your ability to think clearly. Today, I'm going to dissect how to rebuild an empire from the ashes of absolute zero, using the cold logic of mental models. Operating under the illusion that being broke or deeply in debt constitutes a moral failing that defines a person's worth is monumental nonsense. That narrative only serves to paralyze the intellect with a useless guilt that doesn't pay the bills. Financial collapse is not a tragedy of the soul. It is simply a mathematical error resulting from participating in a system whose rules were meticulously designed so that the average person loses by definition. The modern consumer economy does not thrive on the wisdom of the masses, but on the financial illiteracy of those who acquire what they don't need with resources they don't possess. If personal value is not separated from net worth, the war is lost before the first shot is fired in the market. Financial avoidance is the most lethal habit someone living at rock bottom can cultivate. There's a deplorable human tendency to throw away bills unopened, hoping a divine miracle or a lottery ticket will magically solve their insolvency. Miracles have no place on a balance sheet, only strict arithmetic applies there. To escape this hell, and you must first have the courage to look at the map that confirms your current situation, however horrific it may be. Sitting down, opening each bill, and recording the exact amount of the debt down to the last penny is the first step toward sanity. The terror begins to dissolve the moment you stop lying to yourself. The concept of zero should be re-evaluated as a massive strategic victory, not a point of utter misery. For an individual burdened with $50,000 of debt at exorbitant interest rates, reaching a zero balance signifies having won a war of attrition against a predatory system. Zero implies that compound interest is no longer actively working to enslave that person's future time. However, reaching that point requires emergency surgery to remove the ego tax. This is the surcharge paid to convince people we don't even like that we possess non-existent wealth. In a negative balance situation, the luxury of appearing rich is a form of dementia that must be eradicated through monastic discipline. It is imperative to put your lifestyle under a complete and ruthless quarantine starting tomorrow. This entails canceling every superfluous subscription, eliminating restaurant meals, and understanding that a financed vehicle is not a status symbol, but an iron anchor dragging its owner down. The market is a cold, calculating machine that thrives precisely on the impulsive lack of self-control of the unwary. When you implement these drastic cuts, inevitable social resistance will arise. Acquaintances will label your behavior as stingy or excessive. It is vital to ignore this noise. These people are often just as trapped in debt as everyone else, and the discipline of others causes them unbearable discomfort because it highlights their own lack of willpower and character. Finally, it must be acknowledged that time is the only capital left when the bank account has been drained by poor decisions. The average worker surrenders their precious hours of freedom to passive entertainment, seeking a dopamine rush to numb the pain of their reality. That's not rest. It's conscious and deliberate financial self-sabotage. Those 4 hours between the end of the workday and sleep are the ultimate safety net. Whoever wastes them on distractions is actively choosing to remain in poverty. It is necessary to protect that block of time with the aggression of a predator, closing the door to all external interruptions. That silence is the raw material for creating a real competitive advantage. Time is the seed of power. It must not be wasted. The labor market operates like a thermodynamic calculating machine, devoid of feelings and failing to recognize physical effort as a unit of real value. It is a gross error to believe that sweating it out for 8 hours in a minimum wage job will lift someone out of poverty. Simple arithmetic dictates that multiplying a microscopic hourly rate by any number of human hours still results in mathematical poverty. The system pays solely based on how difficult it is to replace an individual with another interchangeable biological part. If anyone can learn a trade in 72 hours, their economic value is, by definition, close to zero. To break free from this exchange of time for crumbs, one must undergo a cognitive metamorphosis and become a specialized asset. Brute force is for oxen. The lever of wealth is the scarcity of technical skill. Let's consider the credential trap, that sophisticated debt mechanism designed to mortgage the middle class's future for college degrees that are often obsolete before graduation. Someone at rock bottom, financially, doesn't have the luxury of spending 4 years and $80,000 on traditional education. What's required is micro-skill leverage, narrow, specific, and aggressively lucrative capabilities that solve costly problems for others. The Internet is the Library of Alexandria on steroids. All the information needed to master digital marketing, software code, or advanced logistics is freely available to anyone with the discipline to consume it. While others waste their nights on cheap dopamine, the rational individual uses their 4 hours of solitude to rebuild their mental software. Knowledge only generates capital when it is applied and scarce. Generating that first $1,000 bill after hitting rock bottom is the most complex psychological operation a human being can face in their life. It's not simply income, it's the physical proof that the identity of passive consumer has been dismantled and that of active producer erected. Those first $1,000 aren't a paycheck from a superior renting someone else's biological time. They are pure capital manufactured from scratch through the use of enhanced intelligence. However, at this precise moment of initial success, the danger of lifestyle slippage arises. It's a foolish biological impulse to want to reward oneself with unnecessary luxuries after a period of deprivation. If one gives in to the temptation of buying a new phone or an expensive dinner, capital will have been killed before it even begins to roll. Cognitive resilience separates a serious investor from a mere lucky individual who inherited a fortune without understanding the laws of financial physics. An individual who receives $1 million without comprehending the process of its creation is fundamentally fragile. If the market crashes, their identity collapses along with their assets because they don't know how to rebuild the machine. Conversely, having risen from absolute zero through mastery of mental models and rare skills, one possesses an empire that no one can legally seize. Even if a global catastrophe were to wipe out bank accounts tomorrow, the ability to replicate success in half the time would remain. True wealth doesn't reside in the numbers flashing on a screen, but in the network of neural connections that allows one to read reality with greater accuracy than the competition. Finally, it must be acknowledged that self-pity is the most paralyzing poison the brain can secrete in the face of a financial setback of any magnitude. Feeling like a victim of the economy, the government, or bad luck is a form of mental suicide that prevents one from learning the lesson the mistake was trying to teach. I have faced personal and financial tragedies that would have broken less disciplined men, but I never allowed myself the luxury of self-pity. That emotion has no practical use in the overall balance sheet. It only clouds judgment and drains the energy needed for the next strategic move. One must assume full responsibility for the current circumstances, no matter how unfair they may seem. Only when one accepts that one is solely responsible for one's own rescue can one stop waiting for ropes that will never come and begin to climb. The reciprocity bias is an invisible biological trap that empties the pockets of the unwary with terrifying efficiency. Human beings are evolutionarily programmed to return favors, and professional salespeople ruthlessly exploit this vulnerability. They offer you a free sample, a no-obligation consultation, or a lavish dinner to trigger in your brain the need to reciprocate the gesture by acquiring a mediocre financial product or an insurance policy with astronomical fees. It's pure and simple neurochemical manipulation that clouds the rational judgment of the novice investor. You must learn to be the unfriendly individual who rejects gifts and firmly says no. Logical loyalty should be placed solely on the well-being of your family and the integrity of your capital, not on the charlatan trying to sell an illusion wrapped in courtesy. Let us now consider the appeal to authority fallacy and the servile tendency to believe anyone who displays an expensive suit or a degree from a prestigious institution. I have observed multinational corporate boards approve catastrophic acquisitions simply because an investment banker with a polished presentation assured them it was a strategic synergy. Regardless of the hierarchy of the person offering an opinion, if the internal logic of the argument does not hold up on its own merits, the advice is worthless. Every recommendation must be filtered through one's own sieve of independent and multidisciplinary thought models. If the emperor has no clothes, one must possess the intellectual integrity to point this out clearly, even if the entire crowd is praising the beauty of his invisible attire. Independence of judgment is the rarest and most valuable asset. Excessive specialization often constitutes a form of willful blindness that prevents understanding the systemic workings of reality. The current market rewards in-depth knowledge of a tiny niche, but that same system punishes those who become functional idiots, incapable of seeing how their area of expertise interacts with other disciplines. It's the syndrome of the man with a hammer who sees nails everywhere, even where there are screws or delicate circuits. To protect capital, one must aspire to be a generalist in the big picture, understanding the principles of thermodynamics, biological evolution, and mass psychology. Only through a network of interconnected mental models can one detect the tipping points and opportunities that specialists trapped in their tunnel vision systematically ignore due to their lack of perspective. Leverage, or debt, is by far the quickest way for an intelligent person to end up sleeping under a bridge on a winter's night. There are three main ways to ruin yourself on this planet: alcohol, impulsive relationships, and financial leverage. Most ambitious people choose the third option because it sounds sophisticated on an Excel spreadsheet. Using borrowed money to invest is like putting a steel spike on a steering wheel pointing directly at the driver's heart. If the road is smooth, you get there faster, but at the slightest bump, the result is instant death. You should never be in a hurry to get rich using other people's capital. If you have intelligence and patience, money will come naturally. There is no logical need to risk what you already have for something you don't need. Finally, it is vital to understand the concept of a margin of safety in every critical decision, not just when buying stocks. A bridge isn't built to support exactly 10 tons if 10-ton trucks are expected to cross it. It's built to withstand 30 tons in case of an unforeseen event. However, the typical behavior of the masses is to live on the edge of their income, blindly trusting that the future will be perpetually clear. This attitude is not optimism. It is reckless imprudence that invariably ends in tragedy when the economy delivers a blow. Without a margin of safety, both in one's character and bank account, one will crumble at the first systemic crisis. Long-term survival is the only objective that truly matters in the game of capital. Staying on the board is victory. The signaling theory is a concept you must examine closely if you want to understand collective human stupidity. We live in a society where people spend money they don't have to acquire things they don't need, solely to impress people they couldn't care less about. It's a form of socially accepted madness. True wealth is precisely what remains unseen. The assets that work silently while you sleep and the ostentation you had the discipline to forego. By relinquishing immediate external validation, you are buying something infinitely more valuable: absolute freedom and autonomy over your scarcest resource, which is time. Financial rationality begins when you manage to silence your own ego and allow compound interest to be the sole voice of the world. You must deeply understand that the world is not a predictable linear machine where one action always leads to a specific result. It is a complex system full of unpredictable and chaotic human interactions. For that reason, I viscerally distrust any charlatan who promises guaranteed results or magic formulas for quick success. In a complex system, the absolute priority should not be extreme optimization for profit, but resilience in the face of disaster. If you optimize your life so that everything only works under perfect laboratory conditions, you will shatter into 1,000 pieces at the first contact with the harsh reality of a crisis. I prefer to be slightly less efficient today, to be much more robust tomorrow. Long-term survival is the only objective that truly matters in the unforgiving game of money. If you manage to stay on the board long enough, time will do the heavy lifting for you. Resentment is a corrosive poison that you must purge from your nervous system if you aspire to maintain any degree of mental clarity. It's the psychological equivalent of drinking acid and patiently waiting for your enemy to be the one who burns from the inside out. Resentment clouds judgment to such an extent that it prevents you from seeing the obvious opportunities right in front of you. I've watched people waste entire decades dwelling on past injustices, real or imagined, instead of devoting that energy to building a sound and rational future. If you want to be a successful investor and a functioning human being, you must learn the discipline of moving on quickly. Life is too short to carry the dead weight of other people's grudges. Clear your mental slate frequently so that logic can operate without unnecessary emotional interference. In the false dichotomy between specialization and polymathy, I will always bet on the individual who masters the big ideas from multiple interconnected disciplines. The current market will pay you for knowing a lot about a small, specific niche, but the realities of the world will destroy you if you don't understand how that small niche fits into the global machine. You don't need to be an academic expert in every field, but you do need to grasp the fundamental principles that govern existence, such as thermodynamics, evolution, and mass psychology. This multidisciplinary approach gives you a competitive advantage that is almost unfair over those who only see the world through a single filter. While specialists are trapped in their tunnel vision, you will be able to detect the breaking points and hidden connections that everyone else simply ignores. Be extremely wary of the death by 1,000 cuts in your personal and business finances. It's not always major crises that ruin people, but rather small, unnecessary expenses and a lack of control over everyday spending habits. A 2% commission here, a useless subscription there, and a lifestyle that expands to devour every pay raise are the parasites that silently consume your freedom. Financial discipline isn't about living like a medieval ascetic, but about being an efficient and ruthless steward of your own resources. Every dollar you manage to save today is a tireless employee who will work for you for the rest of your days without ever complaining. Treat your capital with the respect it deserves, because it is the unique seed of your future independence and peace of mind. At the end of the day, what truly separates winners from losers in this game isn't IQ, but temperament in the face of adversity. I've known people with truly brilliant minds who turned out to be disastrous investors because they couldn't control their own primal emotional reactions. Success requires a highly unusual mix of extreme patience and timely aggression when the odds are in your favor. You must be able to watch your net worth drop significantly on paper without feeling like your world is completely collapsing. If your emotional stability depends on daily stock market charts or the opinion of a TV analyst, then you're not in control of your own destiny. Character is destiny, and in the world of capital, character is tested in moments of deepest doubt and utter isolation. The quest for rationality is a life project that doesn't end until your last day on this planet. It's not a state of mystical enlightenment you suddenly arrive at, but an active and often painful process you must practice every morning in front of the mirror. It requires constant, paranoid vigilance against your own evolutionary instincts and a willingness to be unpopular when logic clearly dictates otherwise. Often, being rational means being the only person in the room who isn't screaming with euphoria or paralyzing terror. It's a lonely position, I admit, but immensely rewarding in the long run. Eventually, you'll discover that the greatest satisfaction doesn't come from your bank balance, but from the absolute peace of mind that comes from knowing you're operating in harmony with objective reality. Life has taught me that the greatest truths are surprisingly simple, even if they are extremely difficult to consistently implement. Work hard, be honest, spend less than you earn, and never, under any circumstances, stop learning something new every day. It sounds like old-fashioned grandpa advice, but it's the granite foundation upon which Warren and I have built our entire empire. People seek esoteric secrets and complex algorithms because simplicity seems boring and unsophisticated to their egos. However, the true competitive advantage lies in doing the basics exceptionally well over a very long period of time. You don't need to jump over 6-foot hurdles. Find 30-centimeter hurdles you can safely walk over and repeat the process ad infinitum. Reflect deeply on your most precious resource, the time you have left. You can earn more money through work and buy more financial assets, but there is no power in the universe that can give you back a single lost second. Therefore, it is a fatal mistake and a lack of respect for yourself to waste your existence with people you don't respect or on activities that don't nourish your intellect. Financial wealth has only one real and legitimate purpose: to give you complete control over your own time. If you have millions of dollars but remain a slave to the expectations of others, then you are not rich. You are merely a prisoner with a more comfortable and luxurious cell. My goal has always been to be my own master, and I assure you it is the best investment of my life. I'll end with a thought about the legacy you'll leave behind. It's not measured by the number of figures in your bank account, but by the clarity of thought you've brought to those around you. If you've learned to think for yourself and helped others avoid the pitfalls of envy, resentment, and irrationality, then you've been a resounding success. Be a worthy ancestor to your future self. Make choices today that you'll be proud of when you have my age and perspective. Life is a character test that's graded at the end, not on the midterm results each term. Stay curious, stay disciplined, and above all, never let the noise of the world drown out the voice of your own reason.